Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am happy to be joined here by Dr. Marta. Hi, Dr. Marta. How are you today?
I'm good, Rob.
Good. Well, like all great holistic veterinarians, you like to be called by your first name. It's always, Dr. Marty, Dr. Marta. But your last name is Nobrega.
Yes.
And as somebody with a very simple name, people seem to mess up every single name in the world. They mess up my name sometimes. So
yes.
I'm happy that we're just going to keep it Dr. Marta. But Dr. Marta is an amazing holistic veterinarian in Bellevue, Washington. And so Pacific Northwest. And we're here to talk about what she finds to be the most amazing health breakthroughs for her patients, her clients. And we'll talk about a little bit about what she does at her practice. So how about we kick it off with maybe one of your favorite topics, Dr. Marta, nutrition. So give me your philosophy of really good nutrition for dogs and cats.
So the simplest thing I tell my clients is to feed their pets real food. The least processed, the better. Some people don't want to deal with raw and they're a little afraid of that. So I have no problem doing fresh foods that are cooked. If they could cook, it would be great. A lot of people also get a little overwhelmed with that. And so then I go on to commercially prepared cooked foods. I really, really like doing local. And in the Seattle area, we have a lot of really, really good local companies. And then if that's even too hard, then I recommend freeze-dried foods. But yeah, basically just real food is my little soapbox.
Okay. And that's your hierarchy is local. I would imagine it's seasonal. Yeah. So local, seasonal, and then always real. And then if you can't do cooked or raw, you can do cooked is what I meant.
Yes. If you can't do raw, I would do cooked. People say I don't cook for myself, I'm not going to cook for my dog, even though the cooking, if you want to make dog food, it's not real like what people imagine cooking is, right? It's kind of throwing everything in a crock pot or a pot, and it's very easy. And so I have many different levels of clients. I have clients that want to do everything. I have a client that bought a meat grinder and she makes these recipes. And then I have people that say, I'm not going to cook. I travel too much. And then that's when the freeze-dried comes in. Yeah,
that's great. Well, we have the same philosophy, and then I'm sure that you're also into rotating diets. So rotating meat, vegetables, all of that, right?
Variety is the trick for balancing. Yeah. I'm not.
Why is it?
Sorry?
Yeah, no, I was going to say.
Why is variety?
Is it the trick?
Because people have been now accustomed to having something in a bowl, like dry food or canned, that is balanced for every meal. And that's not reality, right? That's not how we eat. We don't have a nutritionist analyzing every meal we eat during the day to see if we have enough magnesium or calcium. And so the way we balance our diets is we crave different foods and we eat very different, at least I eat differently every day. And so I have met dogs that have been fed chicken and sweet potato for 3 years. I mean, they're still alive, but a lot of chronic disease. So each different protein, each different animal, each different vegetable will have different components. And so if you're always varying the foods, you're getting a little bit of everything. You do not need a balanced meal at the end of the day, but you do need a balanced meal at the end of the week, at the end of the month. And if we are conscious and we are varying all the foods that we feed our pets, they will get everything they need.
Hey there, this is Rob Ryan. I just want to say how much we enjoy making this content for you here. And if you are enjoying it, would you like our video down below? And would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? It sure does help us get discovered by more people like you who need information like this. And also, down below in our description, the top link is to our trial pack. We hope you'll order one for your dog so your dog can have fermented superfoods that give them nutrition like they can't find anywhere else. Hard to get nutrients that are easily absorbed. Thank you very much. Now back to the show. I'm so glad you said that and you broke it down that way. Dr. Billinghurst always says perfection over time. So balance over time is another way. He also says there's no wolves in nature over millions of years that have ever looked at a spreadsheet or a pet food formulator and crafted their diet that way. They'll get a little of this one time, a little of this another, and then over time, it's actually very balanced. Could you go into how that can even be? I think in people's minds, they're thinking, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. Balance over time. How could you have balance when you have, like, we'll just use an example, calcium in one meal, calcium not in the other meal the next day, a calcium source, that's whole foods. How do you reconcile that in people's minds?
So our bodies are smarter than we give them credit, right? So if you eat a lot of calcium for a meal, your body's not going to absorb 100% of that calcium that you ate. It's going to absorb some of it or what it needs. Yeah. And then if you go for a few days without calcium, it will maybe leach a little bit from your bones, but then you're going to eat calcium again. And so it's always a balance. It's like, it's not either get it or you don't. The body knows what it needs and absorbs more of what it needs when it's available. And then when it's not available, the body has other ways to get it. And that's why the overtime thing, of course, like I said, you don't want to not feed calcium for 3 years. That is a problem. But if that animal is getting calcium here and there, it will take what it needs and it will throw away what it doesn't need. Yeah.
One of the first things I learned when I consulted with Dr. Billinghurst about feeding my dogs raw, my first dogs as adults. So this was the year 2000. 24 years ago. The thing that I read the most was this scary balance of phosphorus and calcium. And I remember going, oh my God, like how could I damage this cute puppy I have? I would never want to hurt it. And Dr. Billinghurst said, relax. There's really very little harm, that potential harm for that, or potential for that even to be a harmful. And he explained it to me as an account, like a bank account. So you have deposits, stores, and then withdrawals. But you keep making withdrawals, like you just said, over usually the magic number is about 2 to 3 years. Nutrient deficiencies really show up. The wolf comes knocking at the door.
Yeah.
And that's when you start having degeneration and, health there's negative health implications.
And of course you don't want to wait 3 years, but it doesn't, it's rare. It's rare that happens. Then that's why I like talking about it. People assume, I'm going to cook for my dog, and then they don't know what they're doing. And then they go to their regular vet, and the regular vet does not help. This person is not going to feed commercial food. But instead of getting, here, tell me what you're feeding, let's balance it, let's talk about it, they get like, no, you don't know what you're doing. You could never learn how to do this. You're not a nutritionist. And so people continue feeding what they want to feed, and I think that's, we should be listening to our clients and helping them.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the benefits of fresh food for pets?
Benefits. A lot. A lot, a lot. It prevents so many diseases. I think all our books on diseases are written based on animals that are fed kibble. And so I truly wonder if our books would be different, if our veterinary textbooks would be different if all animals were fed fresh foods. I have this curiosity to know what diseases we would see then. We don't know.
What an interesting... That's a really interesting way to think about your profession and the textbooks, that it's all been just skewed in the processed pet food industry. Those are the guys that have paid for the research. They funded it. And wow, like that's so interesting. Nobody's ever said that to me before.
Yeah, that happened. It happened with a client of mine who always fed raw, and she adopted a dog. That the person who gave it up, it was a diabetic dog. I can remember, maybe 5-6 years old, and the guy had said, "I don't want to deal with this. I've been giving insulin for a year. It's too much work," and gave the dog to her. And she fed raw, so she fed this dog raw. And she kept coming in, and this, dog's insulin was low. It was low. And I said, you know what? Stop giving insulin. Like, let's stop. And this dog was cured of diabetes with raw food, which is unheard of, because in our textbooks, it's not diet-based, right? It's a pancreatic insufficiency, and the pancreas loses the capacity to produce insulin, and there's nothing you can do but inject insulin. And this one case, that's where I started thinking, wait a minute, what other diseases do we not know are being caused by processed foods? Right? So that's where my brain went.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, we have really sold an overcomplicated model as simple. We've gotten everybody to believe that simple, feed this in a bag. Simple, if your dog gets this, do an injection, go get it every month. You feel good about taking care of your pet the right way. But we never even got to any conversation about real food or anything that could have at least skipped one step.
And there's the convenience. Also, some people just want the convenience, right? It's easy to put the food in the bowl, and it's easy to just go to the vet and get an injection. Yeah. And so some people, that's what they want.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, it's also so interesting. The person just didn't know any better. She fed raw by default. And then she's still I give this poor dog his or her diabetes medication. And then, thankfully had you in her corner, because a lot of vets would have just kept doing it and been very perplexed that insulin was low. What's wrong? What is happening? And probably would have started giving other medications to readjust those. True,
because you wouldn't believe that the diabetes was cured. It was cured, which is unheard of.
But you did. Yeah, well, you were well, this body is getting what it needs. I mean, isn't diabetes mostly a metabolic disorder? So
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so you're giving processed diets. If you have a kid who is constantly eating chips and, Lord knows what processed, they're likely to get, in fact, a lot of kids, more and more kids very young get diabetes, or they're pre-diabetic.
Yes.
And it can be turned around with diet.
With food. But that's what I'm telling you about the textbooks. So that's what you're talking about is the diabetes that cats get, which is insulin resistant diabetes that generally changing diet resolves. With dogs, it is known as a fact that dogs get type 1, which is damage to the pancreas, and it cannot be fixed with diet.
Yep.
And I have a dog that did. So I don't know, was he the one dog in the world that had type 2 diabetes? Or should we question how we determine what kind of diabetes dogs have?
So to what would you say if I asked, does fresh food help dogs live longer?
Oh my God. Yes. There's no question. Question. So fresh foods, there was
and lower vet bills.
Lower vet bills, yeah. There was a study showing that the one study that showed comparison of raw foods and kibble. Do you know this one from, I think it was Sweden, where they did the double cross? Yes. Yeah. So they showed dogs fed processed foods have more C-reactive protein. There's more inflammation in their bodies. And then they switch, feed raw. All those inflammatory markers reduce. And the other group started on raw with low inflammatory markers, and then they fed processed and it went up. So there's no question, like it's proven that fresh foods is just better for the body. But you were saying something else.
I have so many interesting insights about the pet food industry that, like, I was on with a really reputable, amazing expert in meat, for our treats. We're looking at sourcing grass-fed, regenerative, and this person deals with everything very high-end, all the way down to the very lowest end, conventional. And he was telling me how there are lots of ranches that they have this meat waste, and it's not bought up by restaurants or grocery stores. It's just different parts, and rather than throw it away, they make use of it and they sell it to the pet food industry. And so, which I think on one end is wonderful, we're utilizing it, but if people heard these conversations that I'm involved in, and this is of course the kibble industry that they get sold to, the big, we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds. If they could hear this and they knew the quality was so low in order to get the price, I mean, how do these people think that they get a manufactured kibble? I mean, it's made, there's a whole manufacturing process. It's packaged, it's shipped, there's shipping fees, and then they have to give 50% usually margin to a pet store. And like what that really costs to make is like, the equivalent of what it costs to make a Big Mac meal or a Happy Meal or another fast food meal that's sold for pennies,
Yeah, and the other problem with that, the other problem is you're already starting with poor quality food, and then you're cooking and baking, and and you're destroying it as you're making that kibble, and then it has to be shelf stable. So you have to put stuff in there to make it not go rancid. And then the way they make it flavorful is they know they've cooked out all the nutrients. It's like cardboard at the end. So then they spray over, the oily flavorings and vitamins over it. So it's like, eating cardboard with a vitamin layer. And so, even if you started with good quality, you end up with something that isn't nutritious. But we're starting with very, very low quality.
And then you have you mentioned the oils, like the oils become rancid because these things sit in warehouses forever because they make them in hundreds and hundreds and millions of pounds at a time. And if you just think through the process a little bit, maybe no one has even bothered to think about the process, but hopefully this offers them that opportunity. Just the ability, think about the business, how the business is run. And the ability to make it at that cost in big quantities, it sits for up to a year, 2 years, and there's really no laws that are preventing them from selling it like when it's rancid or over X period of time. There's just going to be a recall system when it's too late. Yeah.
And the person that made me think about real food is, Michael Pollan, that writes about food.
Oh, yeah.
Human food. So he always talked about if something doesn't rot, it's not food, right? So, I mean,
beware.
How long does this kibble sit there and no mold grows on it? It's not food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's not living in any way for mold to even want to grow on it, for crying out loud. So this whole thing about we'll leave kibble because doesn't need any more attention. It's
okay.
It's horrible. But I do want to just end with one part, which is the other thing that we didn't mention is the high amount of carbohydrates in these things. And now people have gotten kind of like, the industry's done a really smart thing for their business, which is they say, okay, we don't have any grains, we're grain free, but they pack it with lentils and other things, other carbs that, by the way, are full of pesticides, unless they're organic, full.
Yeah. Yes.
And so you've got high carbs, which dogs and cats, especially cats, are not supposed to have. Yeah. And then you've got, it's just a filler. It's a cheap way to create bulk and satiety, make a dog not be begging for food because it's got a big wad of lentils in its belly. So on that.
Yeah, I think this extra carb actually makes them more hungry. The whole insulin gets elevated when you have a fast digestion of, so your blood sugar goes up early. And so you get these labs that are eating like half a cup of dry food twice a day, and they're starving. They're starving and they're overweight. And so their body isn't getting what it needs, right? And also some commercial foods that are cooked have too much carbs. Like there's some that have way too many carbs, even though they're cooked real foods. And I also had a lecture with a holistic oncologist who was saying she measures glyphosate in the urine of her cancer patients. And it's very high on animals that are eating commercial foods and one of the commercial fresh foods that it's cooked. And glyphosate is one of the pesticides, right, in all of these carbs. But yeah, we know animals don't need that much carbs. Cats don't need it at all. And it maintains weight. It changes the pH of the urine. There's all these consequences to feeding too many carbs. And if you switch a dog that is overweight and starving and eating so little, like the clients say, I don't feed them at all, you barely believe them because the dog's so fat. But then they switch and they start feeding meat. Oh my God. They now feel full, right? They're not begging. They start losing the weight. It's almost like a miracle. But it's the way their digestion is supposed to work. Sorry?
Yeah. I don't remember if it was Michael Pollan or somebody else, but they used the term overfed and undernourished.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But even sometimes I have underfed and undernourished. Right? Some dogs are underfed and undernourished, and they just start giving those foods with more fiber, so they feel full, but it doesn't work.
Yeah. So would you suggest that it's a great diet is a meat, some form of meat, protein, vegetables? Let's walk through that. What is your opinion on offal? How do you advise?
So because I don't do recipes, right? I want people to switch to always do something new. And so I do guidelines. So I'd say I want half of that preparation to be meat. I want about 10% to be offal. And I want, depending on are we losing or gaining weight, I will change the amount of carbs, right? But it's mainly vegetables. Sometimes because they do lose weight very fast when you switch, and it can look very scary. And so if they are losing weight, I do add rice or potatoes or something, oats to add more calories. But if they're overweight, it will be just meat and vegetables. And then they have to switch around the vegetables and switch around the meat source. If it's cooked, if they're cooking, I do also add some calcium because they're not eating bones, right? But if the client will feed chicken necks, chicken feet, turkey necks, then I'll have them do that a couple times a week. So it just depends. That's why I don't have a recipe. It depends on the client's ability. It's very one-on-one. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And so it varies a lot how, kind of my guideline.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing for Dr. Billinghurst talks about, you said, the word you used was, what did you say? It was, he uses principles, and what do you?
Guidelines.
You give
Guidelines.
them guidelines. Yes. So that is the way. I think, what we've noticed, Dr. Billinghurst teaches people how to feed raw. He has a course online.
Okay.
And one of the things we noticed really quickly about people that were coming to the course is they've gotten so spun up online and in social media with these little memes of like, don't do this, and don't do this, and do this, and never do this. You could kill your pet. No. And so what we've noticed, we have clearly noticed this, that people have such high anxiety about feeding their pets because they're told they have to read this book for recipe. Everybody's got a recipe book. And, a new one just came out that's really big and popular. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with it, except for the people who have this propensity for high, they're usually their personality type is analyzer. They're very they analyze everything. And if you put them in that environment, then what they end up thinking and feeling is they can't do it without a recipe. And it's this whole kibble paradigm that the industry has gotten us to believe this whole, and then of course the AFCO regulations and this complete and balanced, concept that drives everybody bonkers, every single person except AFCO. So, and I mean, from the consumer to the professional space that's doing really healthy diets. So anyway, this is all very fascinating. I could just endlessly talk about diet. It is such a big area, but it is also so simple. It is just so,
it's so simple.
Principles
yeah. And I worry that the people that want recipes, they're going to get stuck with one recipe. And because they're like, this works, I'm not going to change it. That's why I say, no, I'm not going to give you a recipe.
Yeah. Because they think that they can't build, they don't build off guidelines or principles. They're building off like, okay, so I was told this could be fed. So I'm not going to keep learning. I'll just feed this and I'm safe.
Yeah, it's safe. Yeah. Yeah. And I know I'm very loosey-goosey. I have clients that don't like it. I have some clients that they want the regimented, and I just try to hold their hands.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think, well, and technically speaking, if you're one of those high analyzer types and you just can't get away from it, that's possible. You're going to do much better having even just 4 recipes in your repertoire
that you keep switching. Yeah.
And then you just keep rotating, every.
And I have to say, I also recommend people, if they're going to buy commercial fresh foods, I do recommend also varying the brands and the flavors, because each company has their own system. Each company is going to have different ratios. And so I don't like to be stuck with one company and especially one flavor. And especially because we do get recalls and people make mistakes in formulations. And so I tell my clients to not get stuck with just one product and one company, so that if any wrong, you've been feeding a little bit of different things. And so, your animal won't be impacted as much.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So let's move to vaccinations for dogs. So what are the most important vaccines for dogs, in your opinion?
The rabies vaccine is important because it's a zoonotic disease. And if a dog or a cat has rabies, it could bite the owner and it's a deadly disease, right? There's no treatment. Having said that, we know that the duration of immunity of rabies vaccine is 5 years. But the laws in each state is different. There's states that give every 6 months. There's states that do it every year, others every 3 years. I can't say that I have like proof of vaccines causing diseases. What we see is animals that are not well getting multiple vaccines and then becoming sick. It's like the body was not balanced enough to get that shot. But in my industry, vaccines are seen as something very, very benign. They're seen as just, you come in, you get a shot, and there's no big deal. And that's not true. We know that for humans, and we know that for pets. So the rabies is the one that I do recommend and try to keep that one up to date. All the others depends on where you live, right? Where I live, we don't really have Lyme's disease. We had a scare with lepto maybe 10 years ago. I don't remember now. There's a Vashon Island had, I can't remember, 50 cases of leptospirosis. This is a disease of the tropics. You don't know this, but I'm from Brazil, and where I grew up, leptospirosis is very big. You only really see it in puppies. You don't really see it in adult dogs. It can happen. But here, I don't know why nobody linked the Vashon outbreak with marine mammals, because lepto is very big in sick marine mammals. And Vashon's an island. And since then, we have not had another outbreak. But before that, no one vaccinated against leptospirosis. And then because of that scare, then we started vaccinating. Last I checked with the state numbers, the last number they had was 2016. There were 5 possible cases in a population of 150,000 dogs. So if it does exist in our region, it's very rare. The other problem is dogs that are vaccinated against lepto can still get the disease. And so I feel like the leptospirosis vaccine is one of the things that we do to feel better. And we give false protection to the owner. So for my clients, what I say is I explain what it is. I explain the symptoms. It is a treatable disease, but it is also transmittable but it does transmit to people. People can get it from their dogs. And so I talk about, like, I can give you this shot, but you're still susceptible. Your dog is still susceptible. It protects against 4 types, but there's many more in the environment. And so I personally don't vaccinate against leptospirosis. I do a whole spiel about it. I tell people, if your animal's sick, take him in. If your dog is not vaccinated, the emergency clinic is going to think that maybe that's what it is, and they're going to treat for it right away. If your dog is vaccinated, that goes to the bottom of the list, right?
Wow.
And so I prefer that people are aware of kind of how our minds work as doctors, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And so, because the symptoms are it's subjective. It's, vomiting, diarrhea. And if the dog is not vaccinated, people immediately go, oh, this could be lepto, which is you want, because then they'll treat it right away. And it is a simple antibiotic that kills it. So that was lepto, which is a big controversy in my area. Indoor dogs, the distemper parvo we know lasts for 7 years. Also it's so rare that a dog over 2 years old would get it. So I personally also don't vaccinate adult dogs against that. I do it because people want a board and, oh, my groomer needs it. I'll do it, but it's not medically necessary. For cats too, indoor cats and FERCP, they're susceptible when they're kittens, and then they're not as adults, and even outdoor cats don't get FERCP. What else?
What age, you mentioned adult dogs, what age do you stop vaccinating your dogs?
So I try to give the last distemper parvo vaccine at or around 4 months old. That's Dr. Schultz's study showed that if you give it at 4 months old, the duration of immunity is 7 years. And so 7 years later, you have an adult dog that doesn't need it. What you can always do to make sure that they responded. So I also delay the rabies, and I do it around 6 months. If we want to run a titer, we draw blood and measure antibodies against that vaccine given at 4 months old. And if they're positive for 7 years. So I would not revaccinate that animal. I have a cat, and I only update his rabies, and he's indoor, outdoor, and he doesn't get any other vaccines.
That's great. And then do you place the vaccine in different areas? Like, is that your philosophy?
I have a funny.
Some don't put it in the same.
I know. I've noticed this. I've been doing relief work, and I've noticed there's all these young people that are doing these things that they don't even know why. They don't know why. So because cats have this propensity to get vaccination sarcomas, which we didn't even really know is it vaccines or any injection. So for cats to try to determine what was causing the sarcomas, we had this idea to do it, different legs. And then it turns out it was the rabies vaccine. For dogs, they don't have that. They don't get the sarcoma. But now it's also, and I think maybe for vaccine reactions, so like if they have a lump or, some in the past, a lot of the very first leptospirosis vaccines caused a lot of local reactions. And so it helps to maybe do that to know, but, I never vaccinate too many vaccines at once. I try to do one at a time. But for convenience, a lot of clinics just give the dogs, all the vaccines at once. So maybe in that sense, you want to know which vaccine you gave where to see what they're reacting to. But it's not that important for dogs.
Yeah. Can you just explain what a sarcoma is?
Oh, sarcoma. So cats have a propensity to produce a cancer called a fibrosarcoma, which is a cancer that's under the skin where we give injections. And in the past, we always just gave injections in the scruff because that's where you're holding them. It's easy to give. And so that's where these things started growing, and they spread so fast, and it's really hard to catch it and make it stop growing. But after we started separating and the rabies vaccine changed, I used to see tons of them maybe 15 years ago. I haven't seen one in a long time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's very interesting. And I did know you were from Brazil and you graduated from Universidad Federal de
Viçosa.
Right?
Yes.
Viçosa. Oh, that's what that little symbol means. Viçosa.
Yes. It makes the C into an S.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, now I know. All right. So you practice a lot of different modalities. Let's just do a rundown of those and tell us what are your favorite go-tos and why?
So my number one new client comes in is going to be nutrition. I love doing acupuncture. And when I became certified in canine rehab, my success rate has increased so much. So rehab with acupuncture is amazing. I also, I do like regular vet stuff, vaccines and treat ears. And I also love, I studied with Dr. Marsden. And so I use his herbs. Anytime he's speaking, I'm there. So that's, I think, is that all? Is that what I put on my website?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think you have quite a few, but I think you basically got it. And it's, I wanted to know what was top of mind for you. So herb therapy, and you're a fan of Dr. Marsden's what? It's like gold standard herbs. Is that what you're referring to?
Gold standard naturopath. Yeah, he also has formulas with con herbs.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. He's amazing. And then acupuncture and Chinese herbs is part of what Dr. Marsden. That's what he loves to do.
Like
it's not
his
just
philosophy.
herbs,
His philosophy is you make a plan, right? With acupuncture, you're assessing the patient, and then the acupuncture points have the way that it changes the blood flow in the body. And so he says, and then you pick an herb that is acupuncture in a bottle. So it's like the animal gets acupuncture every day while they're on the herbs, and it has the same effect of the needles. Yeah. He's super smart. I love that guy.
Yeah. And you've seen this borne out in your practice.
I have. Yeah. I have. Yeah, it all surprises me, because I go in there and I stick some needles in and then I'm like, I don't know if I, and then the people call me. I'm like, oh my God, my dog's doing so much better. And it always surprises me, but it happens so often. I love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Natural miracle. Well, so this has just been so fun, Dr. Marta. This is your first podcast, you told me. So how do you think it went?
It is. I liked it. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
We aim to make it painless. And we've had a lot of new podcast guests. Never done podcasts. And I told you it was going to be fun. And this has been so fun for me. So it's really good to get to know you.
Yeah. Good to know you too.
And so I think that if you're in the Bellevue, Washington area, you definitely want to be aware of Dr. Marta's website, which is Co-Heal, meaning I'm from Colorado. So when I see CO, it always makes me think Colorado. She's not in Colorado. It means she's a co-healer with the owner. Is that right?
Yes. And also as I heal my patients, I am healing myself, right? We exchange energy. And so we heal together.
And the pet owner.
The pet owner heals also. True. Yes.
Yeah. So cohealvet.com. Now, listen, don't get excited. Dr. Marta doesn't have any more time for any more clients, but if you're really wise, you'll get on her list and you'll get in line because, the truth is there's very few holistic vets. It's really sad. When you look at the stats, I mean, it's pathetic how few holistic it's sad how small the holistic vet world is. We already know there's a nationwide vet shortage, actually around the world, a vet shortage.
Yes.
But then when you knock it down into the holistic vets that have multiple modalities, whether it be herbs, acupuncture, chiropractic, all the tools in the tool belt, there's even fewer. And then I think of it as even fewer than that are super talented, have a natural source of curiosity and inquiry, and they're problem solvers, and they're committed to the individuality of their patients. So I can just tell in 5 minutes, having talked to you off camera before we started, you're one of those veterinarians, and I really appreciate you being around.
Oh, thank you.
It's not easy having a vet practice, so thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching very much. And thank you, Dr. Marta. We hope to have you on again soon.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that. Bye-bye.